Oh, what a magnificent countdown. A lot of things can happen during a countdown, you know. You see, during the countdown, my dog came into my room. He's a French bulldog. He's resting at my feet. And then he released gas, a terrible, terrible gas that's lingering.
That's a crime. That's a
Gas
crime.
attack.
That's a crime. That's a crime against nature. But welcome one and all to another magnificent Terran Tuesdays to start off the streaming Tuesdays. And how are you guys doing today? All right, Snow, I know you're going to be joining us for a short time because of crazy weather, so let us know what's up.
Well, I've had my very first dust storm. Yay me. We've had so much
Fun.
little damage today because it's been sustained winds of approximately 35 to 40 miles an hour almost like since noon. We had some big storms this morning that actually came through and blew down some stuff. And I've been riding, as I've been up since about 5 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to turn off my radio. And we're doing that all morning, and then the wind started coming in because it's ahead of the specific front. And this is the front where they've actually canceled some of the Mardi Gras parades because they were going to have winds to 60 miles an hour. Well, we had that here, and so all day long there's been like gas stations losing their covers and people losing their carports and things like that. And it's just been constant. And then the dust storm came through. So we're going to be having some of our people that have respiratory issues probably will start having medical calls here pretty soon. So we're going to be, helping with that today. So that's me. But I wanted to make sure I checked in today because it's a very exciting topic for me is crime, because that's actually something I kind of work on a little bit in real life. So I'll be looking forward to sharing some of that.
Absolutely, indeed. And I do actually video editing, and I'm actually working on a big O, I guess you'd say crime video, true crime video right now, which has been bogging me down for a while. But Black Knight, how you doing over there? How's the world treating you?
I'm well. I was able to um, do pretty much everything that I was supposed to do today, despite the chores, the extra chores that I engaged in early morning. And basically, I wrote the poem. I wrote the bonus episode, the chapter 3 of the Hamster Cane series for Substack, which is a Terran Tuesday exclusive. And this chapter is specifically just like the second chapter and the first chapter. Also, this is a series which specifically deals with criminals.
Ooh.
Yep, the criminals of the racketeering kind. Yep. And I'm happy to say that so far people are loving it, not just because of the hamsters, the Star Shatter's version of hamsters,
Good hamster.
but because the setting of this story is quite criminally infused.
Ooh, that sounds very
Excellent. And we're going to dig into that right now. What I wanted to touch on real quick was the dust storm, because not too long ago I went through one, and when it hit, I was outside in the shed, so I got to see it turn into Mars for 5 seconds right before the dust hit the ground. And they can be quite wicked dust storms, which I think in literature, if you think about it, you don't really see too many dust storms be a central point of for a plot to take place in.
I know we're going to have one now because in Watcher the Dam, because having experienced one now, and of course mine is not as big as the ones in West Texas. This was not a traditional when you think of a haboob and it comes in and it's got the defined quality. I had people calling me and they were like, "Are we getting more rain?" And I was like, "No." And I looked at the satellite and looked at the National Weather Service, and they were like, "We have dust moving in. You could see it visible on satellite." And so then I looked up, and suddenly it was just getting dark outside. So I didn't get to see it rolling in or anything like that. It was more dust than sand here. So it was literally very, very much affecting people that are having breathing issues. And so I made sure that we got a word out that everybody's supposed to close their doors and windows. But we don't have them that often here. So it's not as much sand. So it's a little
Yeah.
different. When you get in the sandstorms, they're really rough. I mean, they can hurt your skin and everything.
Oh boy, yeah, and you'll be cleaning that up for a while. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
indeed. But you said you have plenty to share on crime, and I'd like to dig into that quick because I know we don't have you for too long. So, please spoil us with your magnificent knowledge of this
That is so
magnificent
you.
subject.
That's very sweet of you. Well, what a lot of people don't know is, in addition to being an author, that I actually helped found a private investigative agency, and and I have a family of private investigators. I'm the only one that's not a private investigator. I just run the thing. So I could be lazy. I can just do like assistant stuff. I'm always like, hey, let me help you with that. Let me do this thing. But I went out and I found talent and I put them out there and I actually helped found the agency. And so it's kind of my baby, and we've been doing it for a number of years. And we specialize in white collar crime, which actually is about hiding funds, misusing funding from one place to another. People who go out and hide assets, so that way, if they get a divorce, that their spouse can't find it, we go and find it for them. And of course, we also do public defenders. We will actually do some pro bono work, and we have done public defender work for people, the very special cases that we believe that the client might be innocent. And we are very much into the self-defense side of that portion. So we have a more of a knowledge of what it means to be framed by somebody, or what it means to be falsely accused of murder, and then to have to go in and prove that you didn't do it. And so it's an exciting line of work. It's fun to go and try to find people, especially if you know that there's a reason that you need to find them. We enjoy, trying to help people who have lost loved ones, who don't know where somebody went, or just want to know somebody's safe and alive. We've done that, and so we've done a lot of pro bono work as well. And of course, the white collar crime is what keeps us afloat, because that's a more rarefied group of people that you're going into, that you have to kind of know a little bit more about finance, and even a little bit of forensic accounting. And so we've done that now for I guess 30 years. It's been 30 years, and I was over 30 when I founded that agency. And so it just proves that a lot of people say, "Oh, women don't do that kind of stuff, or they can't do this," and it's always somebody trying to make me into a victim. Like, "Oh, well, they wouldn't let you do that back in the days." I'm like, "I did that 30 years ago. Nobody said anything. Nobody ever stopped me." And I personally, my favorite thing to do is actually to do surveillance, because nobody ever expects me, and that's always a lot of fun. I don't do it now because it's too hard for me, so I can say that out loud now. That if you see me, you would notice me, because my hair, is very red. But I actually was very good at doing undercover investigations, and actually helped shut down a slumlord who was actually abusing his tenants, who were had mental issues, and they would bring them in and put them in 5 by 10 rooms, and then take all their money and their drugs and everything else and sell them. And so I really enjoyed the surveillance part of it. Doing it for a righteous cause, I feel very good about that. And it's also sometimes just telling the truth. The truth doesn't always line up with what you think it is. When you're looking for truth in crime, you don't go out looking to prove that this thing happened. If you do that, you're going to miss the clues that are there. What you want to do is to go out and find out what is true. What did happen? You have to go after that. If you're going out to prove that this thing took place, so I'm going to go to this lake and I'm going to prove that this person is in it, you're going to miss where they might actually be. So instead, you have to go find the real clue that is left behind. And if you're looking for a particular one, you will not find it. You will miss something, because the eye moves naturally to what we want to see and what we want to believe. You have to have an open mind, go in and look at the crime scene and say that we are going to look for what actually took place. And you have to completely wipe out anything you're hoping to find, and instead look at what is really there.
It's interesting you say that, because I've edited. I have a friend who does interviews with sleuths in true crime, and people who've actually interviewed various criminals, and dare I say it, sociopaths and serial killers and the like. And one thing that continuously arises from that, because I'm his editor, so I get to edit all these videos,
That's so
is a
cool.
lot of them kind of run into an issue that you just mentioned, where they get almost married to a theory, and the crime becomes something personal for them, and they get vehemently territorial if somebody kind of pokes at their theory too much. It's very interesting that you brought that up, and I think that's something that's not really, well, it's kind of touched on in some literature, but I think it could be a nice set piece for some background drama, to have like a lurking character who's married to a particular theory, who's getting in the way of the investigator. That's always a nice kind of arc to see in a story, or a set piece to see in a story, to add in more complications.
Oh yeah, and I think that for any story, if you're doing it from a true crime perspective, and let's say this is, I have just like Black Knight has aspects of crime stories in his work, I have aspects of that also in Watcher of the Damned, because in his previous life he did do certain kinds of investigations and was a bodyguard as well, and we do have bodyguard work also in our family, which is why, but when I talk about bodyguarding in Watcher of the Damned, he's actually a bodyguard. That's what he did. He was a very high level bodyguard, where he would go and what's done in the dark stays in the dark, and what's done in the light stays lit. He was one of those lawless people that goes in and makes it happen for other people. But knowing how this industry works, and knowing how to get clients from one point to another, or how to go out and find somebody, how to go track someone down, how to go do surveillance and not be seen. These show up constantly in Watcher of the Damned, because he uses these things to find out more about the villains and to find out what they're doing. And so he has that investigative mindset when he looks at the people that he is up against. He doesn't just go in with his guns blazing, although he loves to do that. He goes in first knowing what the situation is as much as possible. And he frequently studies and looks at his files and opens them up and tries to figure out how things got from one point to the next, or in cybercrime, especially because we have a cyberpunk element with Watcher of the Damned. We have to do that a lot. In fact, my specialization, and it sounds really weird because I'm not a coder, I'm not in any of those things, but my specialization was finding hidden websites. And for whatever reason, I was able to go in at a time when the internet was a little bit easier to crack open. People would go just to a web page and they know what to look for. But if you know how to build a web page, you know how to take one apart. And so you would frequently find, especially back in the days when people had their own websites, you would find files that they'd put on there that they had uploaded because they wanted to share with somebody. And so we were able to find those things because I had, once again, an open mind, and I was just willing to brute force, type in words and find out and say, okay, this is this kind of person. I think they're going to use this kind of password, or I think they're going to use this kind of file name. And so that shows up in Watcher of the Damned too, because there is a cyberpunk element to almost every crime now. Almost every criminal scene that we have has a cyberpunk element in it. There's somebody's using apps to try to contact somebody, or somebody was tracking someone with search engines. And so these other elements, it's not just hunting someone down out in the physical world, although we have done that. It's also about being able to go online, find the digital footprint, go and trace the funds, find where they were spent, go and look for a file that says, it'll say something like grandma's kitten or something like that. And in reality, it's a secret hideaway for his mistress, or something like that. And it's named Grandma's Kitten. So you have to kind of know what they're thinking. And then you're going to have to go to a drive-by of this place to find out, is that really where he's keeping Grandma's kitten? And it turns out, well, no, it's not that kind of kitten. It's another kind of cat. And so you have to know how to think. In some ways, you have to know how to think like a criminal. How would you be devious? If I was trying to hide this, where would I hide it? Where's the first place I would think of if I was trying to hide it? And then go to the second place, because they already know I'm not going to go to the first place I'm thinking of. I'm going to go to the second or third one down the line. So it's a lot of fun to write about these things when you know a little bit about the industry, because you can do a lot more, I think, gritty and realistic storylines with those elements in them. It's part of the work. And if you make it exciting, it is exciting to be working all night, and then you finally find that one file that somebody thought they had hidden away on their hard drive, and really it's out there on a cached website that nobody remembers now because it was 5 years ago. And so it's a lot of fun to do those things. And I think writing those into the stories really gives us an element of realistic thrills that we sometimes don't find in true crime stories because they're so focused once again on what the criminal's thinking that they sometimes miss the investigative side.
Definitely. And many of our famed investigators are almost long gone. We don't get too much true investigation stories. Maybe just a rehash of like what's his name? Sherlock Holmes. He seems to be it's usually just Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
But
it's
go ahead.
Like too usual with the Sherlock Holmes. And even if I remember correctly, there were science fiction Sherlock Holmes, like resurrected Sherlock Holmes in the future.
Yes, Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, though. I like that.
Yeah, that one is cool.
It's not
pretty hilarious.
lame. I'm not saying it's lame.
but yeah,
done.
But
kind of a parody of itself at that point.
Come on, it's like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 25th century.
Yeah, they're everywhere, just like Spider-Man. Like it's kind of like a poster child of the genre. When we used to have a lot of really great pulp detectives. I know one that's still pretty popular, maybe not as popular as I believe it's Philip Marlowe. There's a lot of great Philip Marlowe stories out there. That's a good entry level pulp, and I like that character because he actually kind of reminds me of like a mix of Tony Stark and Spider-Man. Where he has that suave, but he's always a little cheeky, and he always kind of ends up in some trouble, just a bit over his head, but enough for him to pull himself out.
Well, I would say, and I love all of the detective novels. I read a whole bunch of, believe it or not, Perry Mason, Earl Stanley Gardner wrote a lot of great pulp fiction. And if you go back to the early ones, a lot of people think of the old TV series and they think, well, it's just about law. It actually was fascinating because we work a lot with lawyers. We work almost, I would say 90% of our job is with lawyers because we go in and they have a case. They can't find somebody. They need somebody to go and hunt this person down so they can know where to go to get the legal documents to them. And so we work closely with lawyers. And so Earl Stanley Gardner's Perry Mason series was absolutely fabulous for that it's actually pretty thrilling. And they're young in the stories. And his secretary actually tells him no, and he has to get married. It's kind of funny because nobody thinks of that in that level. So, but the most realistic, I would say, out of all of the detective stories, from the early times, the one that is the most realistic about being a private investigator is Rockford Files. Absolutely dirt poor. He's living in a camper by the ocean. Half of his clients don't pay, and he's got to go out and he gets wrapped up in something, and he's got to go find out about it because he just gets excited about it. And we have a lot of cases like that where we get excited about a case, and hey, this thing came across our desk, and this person's needing some help with something, and we'll get into those kind of cases. And Rockford Files, I would say, if you really want to know what it's like to be a private investigator, not a police detective, but a private investigator, because people call private investigators because they need help and they can't find it. It's outside the purview of police, especially when you get into civil law, when you get to where there's a missing person, but it doesn't look like a criminal case. They're like, you know what, we can't help you. They want to disappear. Then you got to go to a private investigator or someone who knows a little bit more about it. And it can be kind of dicey because the licensing requirements are different from state to state. Some of them can be very shady and sketchy. We've met some people that really were very, not really good people. And then there are a lot of them that are very good. They're excellent at what they do, and they're very professional. I like to think of our firm as being that way. And I won't mention who we are because we work, and I won't say who it is. But we've been in business now for 30 years and worked all over the world, actually. And so I love the work, and I think it's a lot of fun. But like I said, I'm the person behind the scenes. I'm like Miss Moneypenny. So I get everybody else out there, and I put them on planes, and I send them around the world or around the United States. And we do a lot of oil field work. We do a lot of things like that. And so the the story that's nearest to my heart as far as a private investigation would actually be Rockford Files. I think is the one that comes the closest. And certainly, I think that the Mike Hammer series was a great series to look at as far as that old cliched, hard-bitten detective that's not necessarily a white knight, is willing to do a little bit more maybe than he can get away with. I think that those are so inspirational still. And I think that you're right, we haven't had as many of those detective stories recently. Part of it's because people have said, oh, I can get on the internet and I can find anything now. And that's not true. There's only so much you can find on the internet. And then you have to go out and you have to start walking. And you have to start looking. And you have to be able to go into places that maybe somebody else doesn't want to go. And you have to get close enough to listen to somebody or get them to talk to you even. Which is, I think that a lot of people don't think about the fact that if you're a very intimidating looking man, like most of our private investigators seem to be, and I can say that because my husband is one, that sometimes people don't want to talk to that guy. They literally, they see him coming and they run the other way. And that's when you send somebody in like me, who just goes in and starts smiling and hugging and say, hi, how you doing? And everything doing okay today? And people will just talk to me. They will just talk and talk and talk. And I've never had to lie to somebody to get them to talk to me. They just want to talk. And usually it's a good thing. Usually it's something that it turns out that they needed to say this. They needed to confess. They needed to get this off their chest. And so I think that the detective stories, the reason that they've wound down some is because people think that everything's out there on the internet. But the truth is, people that slip between the cracks, people that are living on the street, people that are really up to no good, frequently don't show up on Facebook and Twitter and other places. You have to go find them in the real world. And that's where the news stories are going to be.
Oh, I believe it. That's for sure. Because, just going into my true crime video editing, you get a little taste of that because you end up having the file sent to you, from some random email saying, oh, you'll just get it from here. And then just download it. You can use it in the video. Everything's already pre-censored. Don't worry about it. And the interesting part about it is you almost do that, but in reverse, because you mentioned the internet. When I editing one of these videos, we had a lot of material out there, essentially to keep the viewers. It's a mixture of to keep people watching because people in the modern era have really short attention spans. There's a lot of things around us. I believe it's upwards to 30% of your attention is split because everything around you is trying to grab your attention. And when we're making these videos, we make them honestly, but intentionally. So we place a lot of footage, a lot of video, a lot of audio playbacks, information that's out there. And to be able to do that, you start from knowing a general sense of what the video is going to be about. You sit down, you go through what I call the initial edit. You edit it all up without any footage or anything. You just hear what they say. And then you take a day and you spend the entire day deep diving. And if it's something like one of the previous videos I did was on the Zodiac, just spend an entire day deep diving, harvesting information, going to 20 different websites, hunting down every last source. Some information is just going to get sent to you by the person who's doing the interview because they have every single one of these people has their own little bank of files they don't share with anybody. And they'll go ahead and throw you a few images to use every now and then. And I'm just the editor. Like it's my friend who does the interviews, who is the middleman, kind of gaining the trust, doing the talking, and he's just an interviewer. And then I gain all the footage and I put it together. And you go deep. You got to learn every single face, every single image, every single fact as soon as possible because you got like a week for this video to be completely edited and then released. Because sometimes the interesting thing about true crime entertainment is a lot of stuff is generally intentional. Often you will hear a something in the news regarding a crime that happened 20, 30, 50, 60 years ago. A big crime that everybody knows. And then a month later, there'll be a documentary on Netflix out. That's intentional. That's a marketing scheme, believe it or not. And you get to learn and know about all these crazy things and the industry of true crime. And it gets very interesting on the other side. So in a way, I get you, Snow. It's dark. It's dark in general.
It's very dark, and you have to maintain. And one of the things, of course, I said, we're also a deeply Christian family. So when we get one of these cases where it looks really rough, we pray about it first. If we take a case, we do it because we believe that this person is innocent. If we're looking for somebody, it's because we want to find out the truth. And if there's been fraud, we want to find the perpetrator and get the money back. And guys, I'm going to have to go. I've got some winds coming up, and it looks like I got to go. Love you all, and have a fun time. Love you.
Thanks for stopping by. We always appreciate you, mainly because you're a host. All right, Black Knight. I was going to call you Black Snow. Black Knight. It's time for you to get tagged in, my man. Sitting there on the sidelines.
Well, what type of crime do you want me to talk about? Space crime or not so space crime?
Where does your heart lie, my friend? Drop us with the...
That's everywhere, pretty much. My heart is big.
Okay, well, let's start with the space crime and then tell us what inspired the space crime. Because I like diving into your universe, your fictional universe.
Space crime, it's pretty much an extra. Well, to a certain extent, it could be said that it is an extrapolation of earthbound crime. But of course, there are unique versions of crime which you can't actually do them here.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about space piracy because we have piracy here on the high seas, and not just on the high seas. So it's not a unique crime. But in space, I think I mentioned it briefly last time, during one of the previous streams, that you have this unique sort of a grift where, due to the huge distances and even in the age of the faster than light travel, the distances are still huge, and it still takes quite a long time to travel, especially to places where they are like at the end of nowhere, and this is how grifters can pretend to, let's say, offer certain services or know certain things, have certain capabilities, and be able to grift entire, not just planets, but small star states. And this is it's not a one-person grift. It's a whole. It's like a small corporation of grifters to be able to pull this off. And in the beginning, I mean, they have to be, at least to a certain extent, capable of what they're pretending to offer. So that the grift is actually convincing, and it's we're talking about a longer grift now, but in most cases they are not going for money per se. They're going for genes, DNA, unique DNA, and or they are going for entire solar systems, for the planets, for the terraform planets, meaning that they have been successfully able to infiltrate, posing as advisors, as economic think tanks, and basically acting as a fifth column for somebody, so they could later come in without expending much resources, because interstellar warfare is expensive business, costly. Just moving an armed force from point A to point B, especially if it's like somewhere far away, and then you don't have like a 100% guarantee of success, that's supremely expensive, especially like for a corporation-sized force, like a smaller force. And therefore, then you have these grifters, these master space criminals, and this is perhaps like the scourge of current day Star Shutter universe in terms of the most nefarious spacecraft. And these people, they are not like, they don't have like Snow mentioned, they're not, you can't find them on the net. They will not have let's say Facebook profiles, or even they won't have like even pictures of themselves. If they have something, it will be doctored, and it's not going to be even anything of their own. So it's to catch them, I should say you need boots on the ground investigators. That's the only way to catch them. And there is a story I wrote, but I've not published it because it's one of my early stories.
Yeah,
and it's not very good. It needs reworking, but it's basically about this team of disgruntled detectives, which and cops that once worked for one government, but they were like discarded after they had uncovered a governmental conspiracy to commit vast corruption schemes and steal lots of money. And the politicians were able to remove them from duty and basically ruin their lives. And everyone thinks that they are like some failures. They are the bad guys. They had been guilty of corruption, which they were not, but they're pretty much like in the gutter. And one of them is killed in the beginning of the story because he finds these grifters who are like an alien corporation, and they pose as this like benevolent economic prosperity firm which travels to these distant solar systems and provides almost like pro bono services. Oh yes, we're going to help you fix your economy. We're so good. Like we don't want your money because we We are financed by donations of grateful people whom we helped in our illustrious business career, and they carefully, they have people like Snow said, that they do their initial research, so the grift is more convincing, and they pick especially places which are really bad economically, or they have internal political strifes and corruption and stuff, and they come and swoop in on their white horse, or I should say their white starship, and they're like, oh guys, like we learned that you are in need of assistance, we will help you. And actually in the beginning, like in the first year or so, they're actually helping them. They indeed help them. And this is the
Yeah.
probably the most terrifying part of this whole crime, because they're actually doing exactly what they're lying that they're supposed to be doing in the long run. They're just doing it to how should I say, to convince people to lower their guard, and when the time comes, they strike. But that's one of the more unique space crimes I yeah.
Righteous. And what inspired it? Because it sounds inspired.
Well, it was inspired by an actual real life grift that happened, but on like a miniature level as compared to this. It was a man I worked with who once was a part of a state company, and he said that back in the day, they kind of like, because they were grossly incompetent, and there was massive corruption during the communist years, and they had to like privatize some of the companies, and they suddenly found a very beautiful small company, a foreign company, and they offered to work for like a nominal fee, but they were grifters, and their idea was to steal trade secrets, know-how, actually, like industrial sabotage, industrial espionage.
Yeah.
And they posed like, yes, we're going to reform the entire bureaucracy of this company, we'll fix all your problems, we'll fix the finances, we'll audit everything, we'll show you this, we'll show you that, we'll help you. And they helped them. Indeed, in the beginning, they helped them, and no one was the wiser. But this guy, he was like, well, I had a gut feeling, he said. They were suspicious to him. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
That's something. He later was fired because he went to the boss, and the boss was like ex-apparatchik, and he was like, yeah, screw you, you don't know what you're doing. They're actually they're fixing stuff. You can see they did this and this, and they dismissed him. They kicked him out of the company, and like a few months later, the entire consultant firm was gone. They were gone, with all the documentation, all the like everything that they could steal, everything, and they pretty much stole everything. They lifted all the papers, all the new inventions, everything. And they, of course, stole things which weren't patented.
Good old
And then-
fashioned administrative crime.
Yeah, and then they resold them somewhere else as their own stuff.
That actually reminds me of something that I heard not too long ago, where a bit of administrative crime, sort of, where there was this corporation that was brought into Latin countries, and they were producing what was it? It was like phosphate fertilizer, and essentially what they do is they'd get iron phosphate, and they'd mix it with a separate type of ingredient. I forget what it's called, but I know it's high in nitrogen, so let's just call it nitrogen. So essentially, they would go into an area, and this gentleman who was kind of in charge of overseeing their duties noticed that for every one sort of like gigantic tank full of phosphate rock, there was 5 tanks of nitrogen. And he worked in about 3 separate areas. Whenever he brought it up, he always received kind of like an excuse, something that seemed kind of odd and fishy. And it just so happened that all 3 of these countries that he was working in, they all had a magnificent cocaine industry, illegal, obviously. So what they were doing is they were taking 4 halves and selling it off to the cocaine cartels, and just calling it a day with the 1 half when it comes to the fertilizer. So there's some good old fashioned administrative crime for you that happens. Not as thrilling as other ones, but
not as thrilling, but it's like it people even forget that it happens, James. That's
yeah, and of course they make buttloads, like tons. So that's a tons of nitrogen, and they sell it. They sell it, and they get a shit ton of money, and they just split it up. For a story, so you can easily fashion a story over it. Just throw in an action sequence, make the guy who figures this out, your little manager guy, say he's like an ex-Marine, and then now he kind of fights the cartels on his way out to deliver you information what's happening. There you go. Could be a nice Jack Reacher story for you, based heavily off of true crime, which is what people love. They love the true crime. And that's where a lot of the fiction crime comes from, is the true crime.
By the way, which type of crime is your most not, let's say, hated, but which type of crime do you find the most despicable?
Despicable. That's an interesting one. I once knew this gentleman who used to brag about stealing dead old people's social security card or security number, and cashing in their checks. So that's pretty despicable, right there.
That's
That's a good habit for a despicable character and a piece of literature for you.
I'm kind of torn about despicable kind of crimes. Torn between these phone scammers who scam old people and racketeers. I'm torn between the two.
What's your experience with those?
Well, I've had a few friends of mine scammed by these scammers. And one of them was scammed pretty bad, and his daughter was not able to help on time, and he lost everything. He had to leave his house basically because of the scammers. And as far to about racketeering, well, this is the sort of similar sort of crime which I and many others call the parasitic crime. Though in the racketeering case, in the case of the racketeering, it's like a slower bleeding of the victim, but the result is the same. And it's I mean, how should I put it? Like during the communist regime, there was racketeering. It's just that they kept it under wraps. As you know, how communists say, there is no crime in paradise.
Oof.
No crime, no serial killers, no rapists, no drugs, no nothing, no murder. Like everything is fine. It's perfect. But after the fall of the regime, because they had to release all of their so-called bodyguards, and these were people who, and I'm using the word people like, you know, they have been recruited into the apparatus from prisons and other criminal enterprises, and they when they released them from so-called government service, they went back to what they were doing before, and we had a so-called boom of crime, and like the bulk of it was racketeering, because there were a lot of money. A lot of the communist money were circled back into the economy, and they were laundered to become private money, and that meant a bunch of businesses being financed to be open, like stores, shops, restaurants, and this is how I came to absolutely revile racketeering, because these people who opened these businesses, they were normal people, everyday people, innocent people who just wanted to build a new life for them and their families, and they were literally bled dry. A lot of them killed themselves. Many sold their organs to pay. Some had their children taken to work in as you know, private companions, mildly speaking. So, and racketeering leads to a bunch of other stuff, and I do not consider those who are engaged in it human. They are not human.
That's the dichotomy of crime right there. Yeah, I know. It's definitely a favorite subject in literature. Definitely brings out the thrills, but the real crime that you see unfold, you know, it's very disturbing stuff. What sort of stuff did you see, like when you were on, you know, when you had to deal with the communist bullshit back in the day? What sort of things would people do that would be considered crimes that were more so just them trying to get
you mean crime of necessity to survive?
There you go. Yeah. Was there a lot of that?
Yes. You had petty theft from basically in the form of items, manufactured products, which were then sold on the black market. And by manufactured products, I'm talking about household items, cheap stuff like cutlery, everything, plates, even cheap TVs, radios, in some cases, salami, cheese, even milk, like everything that you can imagine. But in some cases, like they just ate it if it was food. In other cases, they sold it if it was an item that was wasn't widely available, and they sold it at a highly reduced price, like 70% off or something. Let's say one piece of salami, spiced salami that cost $10, they would sell it for $2. And then you had the thing which a certain people who were able to go to other states, part of the Soviet bloc, but states that were like they had a bit better economic situation, like Czechoslovakia, or let's say East Germany, or like one of these, like Poland maybe, because believe it or not, Poland was better than down here, and they would smuggle stuff. And I'm not talking smuggling drugs or anything. No. They would smuggle clothes, games, music, and stuff. Things which here they would, like on the black market, they would cost like 10 times the amount of that which they purchased them. And there were cases where people managed to smuggle motorcycles, even cars. And that might sound a bit crazy, but they did. And it was all just to be able to survive.
Yeah, it's got to be intense, man. I know down here, when I was working security for a while, which inspired a few stories, we definitely saw a lot of those kinds of crime. Well, a mixture. You had some people who you can tell they were kind of robbing for necessity, because I was working at a retail store, but pretty much 90% of them you could tell were either on drugs or definitely addicted to them. So their priorities were elsewhere.
No.
That's actually why in World Without End, the fantasy universe for which I write, the cyberpunk world does deal with I guess you could say drug-induced crimes, because that's definitely a major fuel you see today. Did you actually see any of that back then?
Well, it was like three types of this that I saw. The first type was the white dust, le cocainum, which was not like it was only available to the high party brass and their degenerate offspring, and they were quite degenerate. But yes, they had all the money, they had everything, so that was the they were the only people who could afford it. And I've seen things like cars crashed into buildings, cars flipped in river gorges, and like naked people running on the street, and not hobos, but like you can see that they are well-fed people. And if you see that this person is a well-fed person, that means that they are from the elite, like, because we weren't well-fed. We couldn't allow ourselves to be well-fed. It was impossible. And then you have the second tier, which was the massive alcoholism. And you might have probably heard stuff about the alcoholism in the Soviet Union. It was definitely almost the same. Like, the problem was almost the same. And because alcohol was not super cheap, you had people making their own moonshine. In some cases, they died because it wasn't okay, wasn't well made, and they actually drank that other type of alcohol, which was like I forgot. But alcoholism is pretty much the same as that's a drug, and that was like probably the most the biggest kind of like drug-related issue which overshadowed the entire society. They drank medicinal spirit. They even drank antifreeze liquid. They drank aftershave. They drank everything. And then on like the bottom scale of this, yeah.
You can get drunk off of aftershave?
I'm not joking. Yes.
Wow. Do they have a name for it?
I think it was schmuck or schluck. Schmuck or schluck something. There was like a Slavism, a strange Slavism. One of the
How would you prepare it?
I think they mixed it with medicinal spirits. They mixed medicinal spirits with the aftershave.
Strange.
Because it was significantly cheaper than the vodka.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And on the bottom like of the everything drug related were the people who sniffed glue. And
the glue sniffer.
Yeah, they were like, they would put glue in bags, like in paper bags or nylon bags, and they would breathe it. And they would get high.
Yes, I've definitely heard of that. That happens down here.
And there was like that super cheap, like dirt cheap glue, which was produced in by the ton here, and was exported to the Soviet Union, and not just the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like the thing which the druggies who were the worst off, who had nothing, who were probably some of them hobos.
Yeah.
Although the regime did not say that, like, no, we don't have hobos. This is communism. Nobody's homeless. Everything is perfect. It's fine. Don't look at this, like, people over there it was like, I remember I saw it as a school boy. I saw an operation of the state militia when they were gathering, sweeping the streets for these people because they had to be removed since I think one of the Soviet leaders was coming to visit, and God forbid they see something like that.
Yes,
No, impossible. We don't have this. This is great shame. No, we must remove them. And they would actually, I think they actually killed them. I think they sent them to one of the closed concentration camps, and they pretty much shot them because they never returned. And there were rumors that they were actually actively looking for anyone with like traces of white around their mouths. Because when they breathe when they breathe the glue, it left white traces around their mouths. Their mouths were white, basically, like and around their lips and everything, they were white. And it's toxic as fuck. This is like, I don't know what kind of chemicals it had, but it was terrible. These days you can't see these people. It's like, I think I saw the last one.
Yeah.
Maybe 26 years ago, or maybe 25 years ago. I saw the last one somewhere on the streets. I'm no longer seeing them. Meaning that they have leveled up. They are now using better drugs.
Okay, well, I guess that's a good sign for the economy.
Not that sure that's a good sign, but maybe they have like some like cheap pills. I don't know. Maybe cheap. I was told that some druggies use like painkillers, but these like really powerful painkillers that are used for menstrual pains and stuff, and they would get high out of them. How? I have no fucking idea. I don't know. That's just a rumor.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's the corruption. You always got to have some form of administrative corruption if you want to get your hands on something like that. But that's also something we're seeing being uncovered now. I don't want to get into modern day politics, but it seems that corruption's a big one. The Sandwich has seen plenty of corruption in his day.
Yeah, you mean the USAID corruption?
Yeah, plenty
well,
of that.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
So they say. Yeah, very true. It's funny because we see plenty of that in fiction, in the grand sense. Like a lot of the your big governmental conspiracies usually revolve around something very similar to that nature.
Well, it depends. In most cases, this is not a some grandiose conspiracy. It's just like a really simple conspiracy, and people don't like. I'm talking about everyday normal people. They don't realize that this has been happening.
Mm-hmm.
Starting from ancient Greece, even before ancient Greece. I'm sure that this type of like, as soon as government existed, like some sort of a governmental body existed, this type of conspiracy was given birth. That's impossible not to happen. But you can go back to like documented cases let's say in Rome, and after Rome and before Rome, and this is like this is the typical yes, I'm going to help you, but I'm actually like skimming off the top, and we're talking about massive funds like millions, in the billions. In this case, in your case, the US's case is like in the billions upon billions of dollars, of your own money. And this is like, yeah, well, we will have to like invest somewhere, invest in some project, or the easiest way is to find a problem, an issue, which is something that people can easily see and be easily intrigued by this issue, and the issue is left unsolved. Let's say something that you know about. Let's say homeless people in California. Let's talk about homeless people in California.
Oh, how fun! Like what you kind
They don't help them. They pretend that they do, but they actually don't.
It depends on the type, because truth is, there's a lot of different types of homeless people
Yes,
and
I
the
know.
areas
I
they're in.
know.
There's
I
like
know
some
there
that
are, but some don't want to be helped. I know that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's not only those, there's those that do want to be helped and who can help themselves, and over time they usually get out of the predicaments. And then you have the ones who are usually addicted to drugs, and yeah, like any sort of homeless shelter won't take them in because no drug addiction stuff whatsoever. So it's pretty crazy. But there is a industry to homelessness that a lot of people make money off of. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so it's an issue like that, and it's left to grow, and then certain elements within the government, they run, well, it's a problem that keeps on giving for them, because they run to be elected to solve the problem. They are elected to solve the problem. They propose programs to solve the problem, which do not solve the problem, but they claim that they will. The programs fail because they are intended to fail. They just exist. These programs exist to skim money of the budget, and pretty much entire new bureaucracies are created of people friendly to that group, and it's basically how you have apparatchik level parasitic bureaucracy, how it grows. This is how it grows, and the more of it you have, the easier it is then for more similar types of so-called politicians being elected, because these bureaucrats elect them, they help them get into power, and and with each new failed program, they claim to have changed the approach. They propose new programs, they propose new legislations, they of course they have like, we must invest money into some research to see how we can better solve the problem, but they don't want to solve the problem. This is like this is basic government corruption stuff. This is not, I mean, it's not even, it's not that hard to notice. but because like normal everyday people, they're not like they do not have they do not think this way, and they assume that their elected representatives have their best interest in mind, because they would have. That's part of human psychology, basically. They believe them, and unless you have like someone who audits the everything that happens in the government, and every dollar that is spent, and it's like an external force, it's not an internal force, because the thief can always say that, oh yes, I'm going to catch the thieves, but let's be honest, the thief catching the thieves, no, it's not gonna happen. So that's one of the major reasons why you see this like panicking politicians who scream bloody murder. It's like, no, help, they're doing this, we have a crisis of constitutional crisis, and this and blah blah blah. Well, because that's like the gravy train is over, and they have many more other programs and things in the budget, in government. Many agencies, they're sucking money off of the taxpayer, and they're deathly afraid that the audits will get to these programs, and they will say all kinds of stuff. Oh no, this is super important, we're saving people, we're helping people with this program, it's perfect, it's super good. And on the surface it might look like that, but actually they are stealing your money, and they're doing all sorts of horrible things with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's always kind of been the assumption, but for writing, that's a lot of inspiration, and it also seems like a ton of conspiracies are proving to be true, one of which is kind of a dumb yet interesting one that I guess some actually thought, was government funded, turned out to be government funded, was Gamergate. So that was fun. And kind of like a precursor to what we see now, which heavily inspired the propaganda reels you'll see in World Without End, which I'm actually working on in the background to turn into some audio stories. So you'll be hearing some of those
That's
in the
nice.
future. Yes, and I am going to be working on some true crime ones in the future, which are difficult because you wanna do the stories justice, and you want it to be believable, and you don't want to like do anything overtly stupid, if you will, without even knowing, because you're not too familiar with quote unquote crime as a whole, or the what do they call it? The detective stories, like the actual procedures, police procedurals, I believe is the word they often use. And the police procedurals, it's good to have an idea of how cops and the like often operate to help fuel the realism in your own fantasy. And for me, I do a lot of background research. So for those stories, I haven't really released one because I don't think I've researched it enough to truly get a grasp of it. Because you don't want to release a story that's a little too dumb, it has overt flaws. It's just something that the author just doesn't know. Like I've heard one not too long ago where it's like a space story where these characters had to like be as still as possible inside a space pod as it was passing by a planet, because there's this hostile race on the planet that could easily sense vibrations from like light years away or something. But vibrations don't necessarily occur in space.
Yeah, that's no.
Yeah, so stuff like that, because even though it may be known information, it may not be quote unquote well known information. And when it comes to police procedurals and crime, you really got to do your homework, because if you don't, man, there's a lot of places you can mess up on.
Yeah.
But
That's yeah.
But that's also where just generally looking into the crime that's already out there and what's going on and pulling from that helps, because it kind of makes up for the lack of experience. So hopefully you'll be seeing a true crime story soon. But I gotta iron out a lot of stuff and got a lot of other stuff to finish writing as well.
Yeah, I think I had these like super shorts scenes for one of my other websites, which I somehow need to continue, and they were crime related. For example, it was one of them was about the younglings of the Star Shattered universe, the humans, the Terrans, and how they, during their childhood, how they are taught by their parents to deal with the creamies. They don't call them criminals; they call them creamies because they actually prey upon them. And of course, they chase after like normal gangsters, you can say, like mafia style thugs, which are terrible. They're not like they definitely are not weak, but this is a testament to the power of these younglings, because they have to survive in an extremely hostile galaxy. And for them, like normal criminals, which to most of us are quite terrible and terrifying and deadly, to them they are just they're just they are just target practice. And they entrap them, they pretend to be victims, they entrap them, they kill them. They dispose their bodies in their local village fertilizer plant. They take all of their stuff and they sell them.
How fun!
Oh yeah, it's lots of fun. Of
Definitely.
course, they are supervised by their parents. Their
Of
parents
course.
do not like leave them on their own, and there are like some pretty badass parents, like Space Marines, no, Star
Space
Marines,
crime.
Star Marines, soldiers, snipers, etc. Like they're just lurking nearby, fully armed, and in case that one of the creamies is like proving to be a hard nut to crack, they take them out.
Righteous. I know I recently read a space story that had a very interesting cartel, a space cartel that was ran
Ooh,
by
like in Star Shattered.
yeah, I guess so. It was ran by alternate dimension Lovecraftian beings
Ooh.
Yeah. who would kind of be able to bend space and reality around them, and that's kind of how they dominate certain sectors. But then they're just super duper greedy. So even though there's these super ancient creatures from long ago who are from an alternate dimension, they really just like what they do. They like taking shit. They like ruling shit. and they just like being greedy because according to them, there's only so many actual dimensions out there where you can physically possess another physical object, material object, and this is one of the few that is fruitful with possession and material objects.
Ah.
Now, that's the thing you can kind of do when it comes to space crime, you can add in those layers like a cartel, like a actual organization going out there that's doing all this naughty stuff, hurting people, taking over planets, bases, and creating underground rings of different types of BS that heroes can overcome over time. But also you can add in layers of levity and interest. Like your cartel doesn't always have to be from this reality, and they wanting to be here and do the things they do. They don't necessarily see it as like a bad thing, because what is good and bad to an alternate, a creature that's extra dimensional, it hangs out in this reality because it wants to hang out in this reality and hang out with its homeboys and own stuff. But also being in this reality with so much that's good also leads them to like a vulnerability, is in they can be killed because I guess the rules of the reality for which they enter. But they just so happen to be super duper strong. So it adds in that levity, reasoning, and enough sort of I guess you say alien enchantment to draw people in. And also, when you mix and match things that aren't necessarily what you'd say creative, it is creative, but something that's original together, you can put a nice spin on it, like an extra dimensional Lovecraftian cartel in space.
Yeah, it's I remember that once or twice I actually mentioned some of the extra dimensional stuff in Star Shattered, which in most cases is quite horrifying. And some you have also like these ancient spiritual beings, which you can also call them Lovecraftian, which come from another planes of existence. And there was this part of one story where a thing came into the universe, into a Star Shattered universe, and it slowly fed upon the ghosts of the spirits of the entire planet, and it thought itself mighty, and it thought that oh yeah, this universe, it's like my oyster. I'll do everything here, like whatever I want. Like no one is going to stop me. And one day, it's like it consumed the entire planet slowly after many centuries, and it decided to move along. Like I feasted here. Like I'm really strong now. I'll just like fly out in space and find another planet and continue until I grow and devour this entire like universe one day. And it flew, and one day it bumped into a ship and decided, oh yeah, that's just a tiny ship. I've eaten billions of people. I'll just consume it. But the problem is that the ship was equipped with technology that was capable of dealing with that creature, and then even though the creature thought that it was almighty, it wasn't, and it was captured. It was captured, and then it was experimented upon in a laboratory for a century, and then when it was no longer useful, they just destroyed it.
As one does, clearly, as
Yeah.
one does.
Now it's like that. This like test subject is no longer useful. Just dispose of it. We're just wasting money keeping it alive. Just remove it.
Yeah. But with that said, I think we had a pretty fruitful conversation. Got about 5 minutes left before we hit that there hour and a half mark. Black Knights, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me first on my Substack, the Black Knight, substack.com, where you can read all of my new and the newest short stories and poems. Like, for example, the brand new fantasy Blood and Frost, or the serialized Vote Your Adventure novelettes of the Province of Terrans series. And of course, you can find my many published books on Amazon, including all of the Star Shatter series, 7 so far out of 10. And the 2 anthologies, the collection of short stories, Mandate of Sword and Rogan, and the second one, which is the Blood of Tyrants. Then, of course, my 2 Conan-esque Velin novellas about Velin Doltorian. And last but not least, my latest fantasy novella, Lord of Bones.
Excellent. Yeah, dude, you're always working on a lot all the time, and you just never know what you're going to produce next. That's for darn sure. I got my dog trying to steal my attention.
Hope it doesn't fart.
Oh, he already did plenty of that. You can probably hear him scampering around down there. But with that said, I'm James Esparza, the Talking Sandwich. Always here talking literature and media and all your favorite topics. You're watching this on the replay, give us a like, hit that thumbs up button, share with your friends, leave a comment. But with that, we are out of here, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.